last night.
Now we know it affects elderly people with heart problems and other problems. If they have other problems, that's what it really affects. That's it. You know, in some states, thousands of people, nobody young, below the age of 18, like nobody. It affects virtually nobody. It's an amazing thing.
All right, that's a lie. Our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta, asked about this moments ago at the White House press briefing. Let's listen.
Last night, the president said at one of his rallies about the virus, I think he was talking about younger Americans. He said it affects virtually nobody. By the way, open your schools, everybody open your schools. But he said to Bob Woodward, it's not just older people, it's young people too. At 200,000 deaths, shouldn't the president be telling people the truth about this virus at his rallies?
The president is telling people the truth, and you're right, Jim, that he was talking about.
He's saying that it affects virtually nobody and that it doesn't affect young people. He's not telling the truth.
Jim, but you're, again, taking the president out of context. I have his full quote here, and you're right that he was referring to young people. He said this.
Well, no, I'm not taking it out of context. If I said he was talking about younger people, then I'm not taking it out of context.
You are taking it out of context because you're making an assertion that he's not giving critical information when, in fact, he is. And I will underscore exactly what he said. And he said this, in some states, thousands of people, and they've had nobody young, below the age of 18, like nobody. They have a strong immune system. That is factually true. You can go to the American Academy of Pediatrics website, the Children's Hospital Association, and they list out a number of states that have had zero pediatric deaths.
The coronavirus and then spread it to older people.
And
we've known this since the very beginning. And for the President of the United States at 200,000 deaths to go out to his rallies and say something like it virtually affects nobody and that in some states it's not affecting young people, that is glossing over the fact and really diminishing the fact that young people can catch this virus and spread it to older people. Younger people can also be sickened and killed by this virus.
Jim, do you have the quote there with you?
I have the quote here, yes.
Yes, it is exactly as I just read it to you, that in several states they have had zero pediatric deaths. I have the entire list here: Arkansas, Delaware, District of Columbia, Iowa, Hawaii, Idaho, Kansas, and the list goes on. And as you may not know, Jim, the COVID has a 0.01% mortality rate for people under the age of 18. So it is not a disease that affects young people in the same way as older people, which is the exact point the president was making last night.
Jim Acosta, that was not the exact point the president was making last night, as you know, and she certainly couldn't point to every state not having pediatric deaths because that is very inaccurate. What did you think of this exchange?
Exactly. I mean, we've seen this, almost since the very beginning of this pandemic, Brianna, and that is that the President of the United States and the White House press secretary, like previous White House press secretaries, we should add, will just flat out lie to the American people. And the president did that last night at that rally in Ohio when he was saying that it virtually affects nobody. He seemed to be saying that about younger Americans, but as we know, that is just missing a giant point, and that is that younger Americans, while they may not get sick and die from the coronavirus at the same rate that older Americans do, they can catch the virus and spread it to other people. So, one of the things that we've been dealing with throughout all of this, Brianna, and you've laid this out so well on your program, is that the president downplays this virus. He diminishes the threat posed by the virus. He holds rallies where people don't wear masks and don't participate in social distancing because of what he says to his own supporters. And, at the very beginning of my exchange with Kayleigh McEnany, I asked her, whether or not, the administration accepts some responsibility for the 200,000 deaths from the coronavirus in this country. And what do they say to Americans who are outraged over this and blame this administration for all of these deaths? And she was saying that, well, because there were some projections that it could kill 2 million people, they feel like they've done a fine job. But as you know, Brianna, that 2 million projection was only if we did nothing, if we didn't practice social distancing, if we just lived our lives as we did before the coronavirus pandemic. And so they're inventing this false standard to compare the 200,000 threshold against, and it just falls flat when you hold it up to the light of day. And I think this was just another example of that.
It doesn't pay respect to the cost, Jim. I think especially having hit this threshold of 200,000 lives gone, lives that wouldn't be gone without COVID-19 affecting these people. It's so disrespectful. I really appreciated your question, Jim. Thank you so much, Jim Acosta.
Thank you.